Oh, I have a mic for you, Sheridan.
Quiet from the activity.
That should be on. Just makes the audio better for the recording.
We can compare theirs and ours just to see, so we know for other classes we're gonna.
Yep.
All right, double mic. Jim. As much as we can.
Okay, we toss it on.
Should be good.
Alright. Cool, alright, I'll probably get down. I know you gotta get Tyler, so that's on.
Yep.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Stand for flowers. 11, we're bringing lunch, right? Nothing. Make sure you bring, Steven says you're gonna bring the heat.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Well, I do like to teach, so.
When did they ask you to do this?
Well, we had a few different things moving around with schedules for multiple people.
That's a nice way of.
So, yeah, I didn't mind. It works, open houses are something I like to do. Built a good chunk of my business off open houses, so. I'm gonna try to stick to the content though, because that's the intent of this. I just wanna make sure what I have here will sync with what you guys are looking at there. So, how's it been going so far for everybody? I heard you mention you're just in the process of getting licensed, is that right?
Yeah, like I just got, like bought the online
Yeah.
stuff like yesterday.
Good for you. It's exciting. Well, the good news is you're gonna learn how to do stuff a certain way versus somebody like me who maybe has some bad habits that I've had to work hard to break through. So that's exciting. Have you been to any of the night sessions so far, or is this the first one? Okay, cool. Let me see on a break if I can. Let me actually grab Madison. I just want to grab you some material just so you're not like trying to keep up with the screen. Hey Madison. It's her first class that she's been to. Can we give her like something to follow along with this so she's not having to stare at our space? Just even if it's just a print of like section 7 for this one. Does that sound okay? Alright, we'll get you something so you don't have to just feel like you gotta like take all the notes in the world.
Thank you.
How's the night going for you ladies so far?
Good, it's been really good, Dustin,
Good.
it's just me and him, and we did take a lot longer than we
Yeah.
were supposed to, but it was very helpful.
What about the activities? Have you
Um,
noticed some benefit with that?
This is only my third one.
Third one? What's the other ones that you've been to?
So yesterday it was John's. It's about like command. Let's see how much you rhyme first. What'd you say?
Yeah, can you teach it back to us?
Inverted.
So what I found,
It was
the-
essentially growing.
yeah, yeah,
Your data bank.
yeah.
So that one was good. I think the ones that I got the most out of was, Dustin's about growing, your spirit.
Cool.
And then the other one that I got was, Tristan's about the value proposition.
Oh, cool.
That one was really good.
I don't know. Now, when you guys have been looking at the activities, have there been some that have been easier to do than others, or has it seemed pretty across the board unanimous? They're all maybe challenging but beneficial. Like, how do you guys feel like you've been doing on the activity side of things? you'll notice I'm gonna focus on a lot of the activities. I don't know if your other instructors have, but the activities are what bring results.
That's it. I think the only one that really focused on it hard was Lexi, and she actually gave us a challenge.
Sure. So what about the actual activities? How have those been going? Not so much the classes that have talked about, but the activities themselves.
The main one was the conversation sheet, which I've been doing. which
Very good.
is Conversations. And then your social media engagement, which was the 10-5-1. 10 likes, 5 comments, a post to share, a friend request, whatever.
How do you feel like you've been doing on completing those?
That's easy for me.
Okay.
And social media.
What's the part that's not easy for you?
Calls.
Yeah.
Conversations, and then the other one that I've been struggling with is actually adding 10 contacts every day.
I'll see.
I don't know, I
That's-
just hope it's random people that I talk to, like, so.
I feel like you've already got everybody that you know in there.
So it's kind of random, I was kind of joking with Kirky, like, I feel like I'm now starting to feel like, okay, I'm pumping gas into somebody, what's your name and phone number?
So it honestly does turn into that at a certain point, but there's ways through specific types of conversation style or questions that you can ask. Like Dustin always gives me a hard time because I really never shut off prospecting, but nobody ever really feels like I'm prospecting. And so I think that's just a cadence that you pick up over time. But I mean, a perfect example, I've got a plumber down working on a renovation right now, and he came out to give me a bid on stuff, and I just asked him, I was like, hey, you know, how long you been doing this? Like struck up normal conversation. And just asked him, you know, hey, do you do service work? Like I've got clients, you know, we sell 100, 120 houses a year. Like clients call me and ask me for a plumber all the time. I need another person who's reliable. You've obviously been reliable for me on this job. Would you be open to me referring you business? So I dangled the carrot of, you know, can I give you more work? And I said, hey, you know, are you working with a realtor now? So if you ever found something that you're going to buy and flip or you're going to move into, and he's like, man, honestly, I work for several realtors and nobody's ever asked me that. So like, you have to kind of program your brain that most people have the cognitive reflex of, I'm just not going to bother them or not going to ask. And you'd be amazed at how many people also think that way and just never do. So you can flip the script on its head a little bit by just simply asking, right? And then the other thing that I've had good success with, because you all picked up on some of the conversation before we started, my business has been built off of organic relationships. I've never paid for leads. I don't have to. I've chosen not to. That's not saying there's anything wrong with people that do. And for me, I realize it's a whole heck of a lot easier to ask people to work with me if I had a relationship. So I could either spend a bunch of time trying to generate new relationships or cultivate the relationships I already have to pull new business out of that. And so for when you may feel struggling, like adding some people to that database, if you've got people that know you, like you, trust you, would use you, maybe don't have a need right now, but know you're always willing to help. I like just taking the stance of, hey, if there's a way that I could help anybody else that you know, the same way that you know I would help you, I'd love to get that opportunity. Do you know anybody off the top of your head right now that could benefit from my help? I'm not saying, hey, do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest? Right? They teach us some of that scripting, and that can work. That's not saying there's anything wrong with that. And I've had better success just saying, hey, how can I help? And it might be like, I need a plumber, right? Well, great. I just ran into an awesome one in Nicholasville last week. Let me get you his contact. Or, hey, if you're renting, well, if you ever decide that you need to find a new place, or if you need to actually purchase, I'd love to be a part of that. Or if you're an owner and you've already bought, well, I can tell you it's a matter of when, not if, something breaks on your house. I've got a great vendors list I'd love to share with you at any time. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. And that can transfer into some of what we're going to talk about today with the open house piece. But it's good to know that you guys are working on the activities. The more you can get comfortable with the uncomfortable piece,
Yeah.
it's gonna feel better. And look, at 10 years into the business and creeping in on 11 now, I'll still get nervous when it comes to making a tough conversation or having that. But I know that the benefit on the other side of that uncomfortable conversation is worth me feeling uncomfortable or getting those knots in my stomach before I ask those tough questions. Because people all the time, they hear me on the phone, they're like, you know, does that not terrify you? Well, yes, it does. And I know that when I step outside my comfort zone and offer that help for somebody, there is a result. And normally it's them getting what they need or what they want. And then I get to ultimately help that person, which feels way better after, right? It might be uncomfortable or murky while we're on the way. But I do feel like getting outside your comfort zone, open houses is a great way to do that. Especially right now. I feel like a lot of people are coming into open houses that have an agent, but they haven't talked to them. So I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend, we had people come through our open house that Mark had an agent and hadn't talked to him in 4 months. Do they have an agent?
Do you make them write down their agent's name?
I like to, but when they start signing in and they don't remember it, well, that just tells me you don't have a relationship with your agent. Right, so that gives you an opportunity to follow up.
The other. So that in that Justin brought to my mind was that, you can use the adding people of family members that you don't have all their contact with. You know them, so, and you know how to get a hold of them. Because you can call another cousin or whatever and be like, hey, I don't have so-and-so's information. Can I get that,
Yeah.
and then contact that cousin or aunt, uncle?
And it's just good practice, right? The more you do this, the more you create staying power in your business and you're doing business with more people, the easier it's going to be to get in the flow of having the repetitions already under your belt on how you're going to go and input that person's information later. So I'm a huge fan of just simply getting the act of putting those people in my database so that in the future, when they need something, well, they know they can use me, right? So quick outline on what we're going to talk about. We're going to obviously talk about capturing leads with open houses, some best practices. We're going to talk about how to prepare, prospect, and pursue. And then we're going to have recaps and ahas as well. Thank you, Lexi. And then we'll touch on the daily success system because I do think that's important. So, quick quote. I've obviously clicked off of this. Gary Keller from the MREA book says, nothing else about your business will have as big an impact on it as the number of leads you have. Timely quote. We just talked about getting leads, right? And a great way to do those is to do an open house. So let's dispel some limiting beliefs around open houses. If you all read what's on the screen, do you all feel, I know obviously for you have not hosted any, you can still feel these. And if you ever feel like I'm not looking at you,
No,
you're not gonna hurt my feelings.
Here's.
No, you're more than welcome to sit over here if you want, so you don't feel like you're on the line. Yeah, come on over. Let's have a party. Cause I will inevitably like break my neck trying to make sure I come look at you. It's
This side of that.
yeah, keep me from tripping. Exactly. So some of the limiting beliefs that they have obtained from people who think about open houses. I don't have a listing to hold open. Is that fair? Have people felt that before about open houses? Like, I don't have my own listing, so how can I hold something open?
Yeah.
I don't have signs yet. I may not know the answers to questions visitors have. Open houses don't really work because most people look online. I won't feel safe. Do you think these are reasonable? But they are things that, even if you haven't had all of them, somebody's probably thought them at some point. So what we might look at they've got the same thing in there twice. What would be ways to flip this limiting belief or these limiting beliefs? I don't have a listing to hold open. How could we flip that?
Ask. So everyone has a listing, I think.
So maybe going and finding the listing, right? That especially you feel like if it's relatively new on the market, or if it's in an area that seems like should be well trafficked, right? If it's a neighborhood, like if you told me there was a house in Southland Drive area and they weren't holding an open house, I'd say you're an idiot, right? Respectfully, but how many people do we see walking in that neighborhood? my God, Saturday and Sunday, there's probably 100
That's
families up and down, right? And you can walk to the shopping, you can walk to eat, you just walk the neighborhood because it's that kind of neighborhood. So I would coach anybody considering open houses to think about what area does it feel like maybe is the best traffic, right, or a popular area, and then also, where do I feel like I can find something that has, we'll call it the luster of maybe a new price, or it's a new listing altogether, right? There's a reason for people to come here who maybe haven't been here yet. There's also ways that you can talk with that agent who has the listing to say, what's traffic been like? What are the key selling points? What's feedback been like? Because that lets you get down. I'm gonna skip around some, but I may not know the answers to questions visitors have. So I'm amazed at how many agents host my open houses that don't call me just to ask simple questions. Hey, what do you think the most beneficial part of owning that home would be? Why did the sellers love that house so much? Or why are they moving? Right? Because that's a question I get all the time. It's really none of the buyer's business, if you want to just be frank. But sometimes you say, well, they have job relocation, right? Or, the listing we have right now on Mooncoin. The reason those people are moving, they built that house, it's perfect for them, and they've outgrown it. They need a basement. So they wouldn't sell their house if they hadn't ran out of space. But here, let me tell you about the things they love. So that's where I like to be able to pivot that to a question into, I can acknowledge the question. I can then follow up with, can I tell you about some of the stuff they love about this house or that they picked out when they built it, so on and so forth. Because really, people ask questions for the sake of asking questions, right? Have y'all ever been in an awkward situation? Like, maybe it's a public outing of some sort. You get introduced to this complete random person, and then like all of a sudden they ask an off the wall question. That's the same crap buyers do when they come into open houses. Well, for sure, right? Like they've never met you. You're there, like there's nobody else in the house. And it's kind of like, do I just ask a question for the sake of asking a question? Or am I here on a mission to buy a house today? Most people who go into open houses, they're probably either just starting or they're out actually looking, right? Most people, I will say, most people don't come to like make it awkward for you. And if they do, then there's ways that you can protect yourself and make sure that it's not weird. I've only had a couple of those in 10 years where there's like a perennial guy that shows up at the grand tour of homes and like asks the most off the wall questions in front of people. And when he comes in the door, we all kind of knew like that's the guy. And then we'll find ways to make them comfortable, but also get them out quickly. That's not a very common thing, but it's something to think about. So I would say on the subject of, making sure the questions that visitors have, while asking that listing agent who's already met with the sellers, what questions have you gotten? What feedback have you gotten? Positive and negative, because that's more than likely what you're going to hear at the open house. Is that fair?
Also, like, offers, showing things, that's always the question.
So if I were thinking about hosting open houses and I hadn't done a bunch, or maybe I felt like this would, because I think this right here, that I may not know the answers to the questions visitors have, probably holds most people back from hosting open houses because nobody ever wants to say the 3 famous words, I don't know. So
I can follow up.
thank you. So I would have a preloaded list of questions that I would want to know about. You hit the nail on the head. Traffic, offers, feedback. What selling points do the sellers feel like their house is above and beyond the rest of the comparable homes? Go ahead and fill those out before the open house. It takes you 5 minutes. There's going to be dead time at an open house. You can just sit there and read through it and feel comfortable with it because it does help to kind of know the answers to those questions. I don't have signs yet. That's the worst one I've ever heard. You can call me and borrow. Like, yeah, I mean, Lowe's has them, right?
Bluegrass Realtors also.
And if you don't want to spend money, somebody will loan you them. I promise. Like if you ever need them, you can call me personally. You can take mine. Now they do have my brand and logo on it, but I'm not going to be upset if you put 20 billboards out in the neighborhood that have my logo on it. So that's fine. We'll touch on preparing for an open house in just a little bit, but the best compliment I get, and this is gonna sound funny, but like agents that I see out in public or like members of the same club we're members at will come up and be like, how many freaking open house signs do you need? I'm like, well, clearly I put out enough because we're having this conversation, right? They're like, dude, I was pulling in my neighborhood, you all had 40 signs. Perfect. Because if they're thinking that, you know who really appreciates that? My seller. when they pull out of their house on Friday afternoon to go to the ball field or go out to dinner, and they're driving out of that neighborhood and they see open house directionals routing to theirs. Now, they may not get the traffic that they desired, and they can never go to bed that night knowing I haven't prepared properly to put them in the best position to have traffic at their open house, right? I won't feel safe. If that's a thing, take a friend, right? Or make yourself, since you all are all women in the room, I'm not even gonna pretend to believe that I've dealt with some of the same uncomfortable situations you have, because, you know, most people that deal with this type of thing are probably of the female gender. You all have ways that you can make yourself feel safe in certain instances. Bring those to your open house, whether that's a friend or have somebody on FaceTime or whatever the thing looks like, right? I never, like, I've even been in situations where I won't go up the stairs first, or I won't turn my back in certain situations. You all obviously have dealt with that way more than I have at some point in the past, so just be smart, right? Most of the time though, you're in a neighborhood, it's during the day, like, it's extremely low probability or chances that anything bad would happen. But if there's things that you can do to make yourself feel more safe, then certainly please put safety first. So this is just a heading. So open houses, who benefits? So we're going to talk about who benefits the most from an open house. So I think you all have your participant guide on this section. I'm not 100% if my page numbers match on your all's. Perfect. So 10.3. We know that the two main goals for the open houses are to A, obviously sell the house, and B, probably more pressing for you all, generate leads. All right. So who does the open house benefit? And you've got some of these answers here, but I'd love to hear you all tell me why these people benefit from these. So sellers, why do they, if they're the who benefits, why do they benefit? So they're getting exposure. What about the buyers? How do they benefit?
Maybe it's the second time.
Good point. So maybe they've already seen it once, they're coming back. A lot of people are just maybe just starting their adventure on home buying, right? So this might be a way for them to see a
See
property.
what's out there.
They maybe don't feel the pressure of having to sign a formal buyer's representation agreement or have like an obligation to a realtor, so they can just go and it's kind of more casual experience to view the house, right? Maybe they've looked at plenty of houses with their realtor and they're tired of looking at houses with their realtor because every time they go, the realtor's maybe pushing them to make a decision. So this way they can come, oddly enough, we just talked about it, hang out with a stranger who's probably not going to be like, so you guys want to put an offer in, right? Or there's something like I've heard it all, like because I've been in open houses where the agents come in with their client, and I hear some awful wall stuff. Like I don't think the agent needs to necessarily say, "Well, this is the kitchen." It's like, well, no shit, I didn't know where I was going to cook, right? So just things of that nature would be reasons buyers benefit. There's a stat, I don't have the exact date of when this was from, but I would argue this number is probably even higher. It says 51% of buyers find the house they want to purchase through open houses. So that tells me even by 1%, it is a majority of buyers, right, that find their house through open houses. So it's a great tool to meet people. And if they are buyers and they are looking, then what a great way to have the product, right? So for me, open houses is as close of a retail experience as I can create in real estate. There's no other way for me to create a retail experience. Has anybody ever worked retail before? I have. Food, bev, retail. So typically in retail, I have a product that somebody wants, right? And they come in to test the product, view the product, and ultimately purchase the product. Well, in real estate, is there any other way to create a retail experience other than an open house? You could argue having listings would be the same way, but it's one thing that Waffle House sells waffles, but if they were never open, how would you get waffles? Well, I'd have to order them online. Well, right now, at least today, I can't just buy a house online entirely. At some point, there's going to have to be human interaction, right? So can I create that same experience for my house that I'm going to host open, even if it's not my listing? You absolutely can. And if the seller's agent, the listing agent can't hold that open, I'm sure if it was a property that they felt like would do well for an open house or get the exposure, they should never say no to that. And if you're nervous about doing it for your first time, you could probably tag along or team up on a open house with somebody and split the leads, right? However that works. Have you done that before? It does work. All right, what about the neighbors? How do they benefit? Other than maybe having people park in front of their house, maybe that's not a benefit, but how would neighbors benefit from open houses?
That's their house.
It's kind of free research for them, right? How does their house compare to mine? And how is their house being trafficked compared to mine? Again, we'll touch on preparing for the open house, but we have gotten several listings over the years simply because how well we prepared for their neighbor's open house. Damn, y'all put a lot of signs out. Or y'all had 15 cars parked up and down the street. Hey, wouldn't you love if when the time came to sell your house, you could have that same experience? Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when the time comes, we'd love to have a conversation about how we could run the same exact play on your house and help you get it sold. So that's how the neighbors can benefit. What about you, the agent? How do you benefit? There's probably several, but let's just chop through what you all feel like you as the agent benefit from hosting the open house.
Prospect. Go and learn forward.
Okay.
Marketing, is your signs out. Yard.
So capturing the leads for potential buyers or other sellers, future buyers and sellers through some prospecting.
And then lead generating because people are coming to you. So contact them. You can send them follow up their houses, yeah. For me, like, yeah.
So how would you, let's talk about that because that's a very good one that I don't think anybody does at a level they should. So one thing that I was taught early on, especially because we work new construction and we had a higher price point, a lot of the people that walked in my open houses couldn't afford them. And that was no knock on them, it was just the reality. At the time, it was the highest priced custom home builder in Central Kentucky. So 98, 99% of people that would come look at it were never going to buy it. And me knowing that and being a newer agent, I was like, well, shit, if I got a bunch of people walking here who can't buy this, what can they buy? So knowing what was listed in that area or knowing what was listed in general was an easy way for me to say, well, hey, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a ranch? Are you looking for something 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms? Is it this zip code? Is it this school district? And being able to quickly provide them with what those listings were. Now, there's ways you can use tech to enhance that experience or speed that up, right? If you had the MLS pulled up on a device of some sort, I see laptops and phones and everything else in the room. If you have access to that, you can quickly pull up listings that have that. Or if it's not a high price home and it's not like a crazy high and you're in a neighborhood or a good zip code, then maybe just pull in all the listings that maybe they're also hosting open houses at or that are listed right now and say, hey, if it's not this house, right, and you're thinking maybe another one, have you looked at any of the other houses in the neighborhood? Well, I really wish that house down the street had an open house like you guys did today. Well, I understand that they're not hosting one this weekend, and would you like, I'll be done at 3:30. Would you like to take a private viewing of that house? Boom. Now you've got a reason to follow up with them. And one thing that I like, and we do have the dead time at the open house, if you have a search already saved for that neighborhood or like comparable homes for the one you're hosting, then you could easily just take that person's email. Hey, would you mind if after the open house or during, if I get some breaks here, if I just sent you a list of the properties that are in this neighborhood? Are they going to say no to that? Most oftentimes not. If they do, that's great. You at least ask. So the last benefit that we'll touch on is just the repetitions. So repetitions of being able to have that FaceTime with a customer, ask the questions that maybe you've been practicing on how to ask, or getting used to being asked questions on the fly so you can see how well you respond. And it's all right if you screw it up. Like there's nobody that's going to come behind you and grade you and say, you really did a bad job answering that question. Like I don't think you're going to host open houses again. I had somebody early on that told me any question that I get asked that makes me feel uncomfortable, write it down. Have like a note in your iPad or your computer or just a handwritten note if you're a pen and paper person. Write them down and answer it or find answers to that question until you're not uncomfortable with it anymore.
So one question that I've been asked quite a bit at open houses, because several of the open houses have gone under contract and gone back out active again, is I have people ask, well, why did it go back? Like, was it the inspection? Was it? And I struggle with answering it enough, but not revealing too much.
Yeah. It ultimately be what the seller's discretion or the listing agent's discretion, or if you're the listing agent, what your discretion with your clients was. But I mean. You can the public's not stupid, right? Everything they have at their disposal can tell them. So what's the normal due diligence period that somebody has on a house? Due diligence.
Oh, 10-4.
So if I ran my history on that listing and I saw that it went under contract on the first and it's back on market somewhere between 7 and 14 days, what can I reasonably assume?
Inspection.
So if it is that, there's no sense in trying to beat around the bush. Hey, I'm not 100% sure, I haven't seen the results, and I know that the buyer and the seller couldn't come to terms during due diligence, and their loss could be your gain. Do you have any other questions about the property? So you're acknowledging it, that's a great question, and like, what's it matter to you? Are you buying a house or are you not? Right, and there's ways you can say it without being a jerk, but there's also ways you can, because that's, for me, that's really not the question they're asking. So like I've learned, we talked about like a retail experience, right? Y'all ever been to Best Buy or, a retail store? Can I help you with anything? What's your response? Do you buy stuff a lot of times when you are at the store? Happens to me at Best Buy all the time. Can I help you with anything? No, I'm good. And then when I need something, I'm trying to find like the associate who looks like they know what they're doing. And I'm like, hey, can you come over here and help me? And it's usually the same person and ask me if they can help me with anything. All that being said, that was an initial knee-jerk response from me, and most of the time, they just want to know, because at the end of the day, they might be nervous, right? They may have never bought a house before. So why is it back on the market? From my understanding, right? If I was going to host that and I saw that it was back on the market, I would want to touch base with the listing agent and just get as much details as their seller would allow them to share with me about why it's back on market, so that when I do get asked that question, because the writing's already on the wall, right? It says back on market with a big freaking circle on the MLS. And so it's like, okay, that's not a secret, right? Let's just talk about why, and that way we can address it and feel comfortable. But I'd say whatever your personal style of answering that would be, I've found that most of the time that's not really what they're concerned about. They just maybe have a lack of trust of what sellers are willing to share with people. And so if you get to the bottom of that, like, hey, it is back on the market, and hey, that can be a good thing. You mind if I share with you why, right? Some people may just not have understood what came in that home inspection. And it may have fallen apart because the agent on the other side might not have known how to negotiate that properly. We don't really know. Now, if you have specific questions about the house that you see that I can follow up on, I usually tell buyers this. If it fell apart for your buyers, there's probably a good chance that it would fall apart for my buyers. So can we agree that the sellers probably are going to have to repair something if it's going to be a reoccurring thing, right? So if that's the case, either we can make our offer inclusive of that. Maybe we can make our offer if we're able to see a copy of that home inspection report. Because I promise you, the listing agent probably hasn't gone ahead and updated the seller's disclosure like they're supposed to. So if it fell apart, it fell apart. And if we know why, or at least as much about it, we can figure out how to pivot that energy towards, well, what's the real question, right? The next thing we're going to talk about is this 10-4, I guess, in your all's. The benefits of the open housing?
7-4.
7-4, I'm sorry.
Benefits, yeah.
Did you say 10-3 earlier?
No, I said 7.
Did she say 10-3?
She said 7.
Okay. I heard 10. I'm just checking. Hey, I'm just checking to make sure you're still here. Alright, so benefits of the open houses. So this is going to be some of the benefits of why this can be a productive tool for your business, right? So we talked about what we think some of the benefits for the open houses are for other people. So one of the primary benefits of an open house is that they are relatively inexpensive to host. Does we agree with that? We talked about the signs piece. You can always borrow mine. Again, I'm not going to get upset about seeing Catalyst logos across the neighborhood, but you can go to Lowe's and get them extremely cheap. If you're putting them out at a decent time and picking them up, your chances of losing those signs is lower probability. There are yard militant people who like to just pluck them up. To your point about knocking doors, like when we are going to put an auction up, we know we're going to have a directional sign there for 30 days. We actually just knock on the door and just say, hey, my name's Sheridan or my name's Tyler. We're auctioning the house down the street, and we're going to try to get as much traffic through that as possible, because that's our goal for our sellers, is to get as much money as possible at the time of the auction. We typically use directional signs. Would we have your permission to have this sign here until the auction? And if at any point you want that sign gone, can I just ask that you'll call me before you throw it in your dumpster. Because those do cost money, and everybody that's ever lived has had to spend money. And it's like, hey, before you chuck this, I've got 10, 12, $15 invested in these couple of signs that are out. Just call me. I'll drive over here. I'll get it. That way I don't have to try to replace it and spend more money on that, right? So there's ways you can protect that investment. Other than that, you're talking about print materials and then just your time, right? And so if you've got the time and you're choosing open houses, then for me, that's really not monetary expense. It's just my time collateral that I'm injecting into that. Open houses can be obviously a very good prospecting tool, like we talked about. That's for a great way to meet potential buyers, future sellers if the neighbors come in. Because I can tell you how many agents out here that say, well, I just had a bunch of neighbors. Well, did you think about that as they're being nosy, or was that an audition to potentially sell their house in the future? Right? Because some of those people may be walking to the open house saying, well, I'm thinking about selling, but I haven't talked to my realtor in 2 years. These people had 50 signs in my neighborhood. I mean, I couldn't turn around and they didn't have a piece of marketing. Maybe I'll interview them to sell my house. Right? Another great thing is other agents. You might get to meet other agents that maybe have other listings that are coming up. So you can say, hey, I've got 10 groups of people that came through today. Do you know of anything else that's coming in the neighborhood that I could potentially send those people I was just talking to? And again, that is probably, there's a few things that I'll call underrated. We talked about earlier, not knowing the comparables in the neighborhood. Networking with other agents is severely underutilized and underrated because who typically carries listings? Agents. And who do people try to avoid like the plague most of the time? Other agents, right? But for me, I've learned that if I need something, right, or if I have clients that can't find what they want, other agents typically know where listings are. So I can have a good relationship with that person. If I called you and said, hey, I just had that open house, really liked a lot about the house, they didn't have it. I see that you've sold 4 or 5 houses in the neighborhood. Do you have any past clients that are thinking about selling? Or do you know of any of the neighbors that are thinking about selling? Well, actually, yeah, so-and-so is looking for this, right? During COVID, we had to almost become massive prospectors for properties that weren't listed yet. Because everything, as soon as it got listed, was gone. So we're blanketing neighborhoods with door knocking and postcards, and we have somebody who wants to move into the area. We don't care what the house is, what it looks like, what's in it. We just want to know, is it for sale or could it be for sale? So then at least I can put that in front of my customer. Well, it's funny how quickly everybody's gotten away from that. That's really all we're doing. And your agents, your peers are the best people to network with to find those, right?
And back to your whole thing about going around before an auction. Asking if you can put directional signs out, that also is a chance to get their information and let them know who you are,
That's correct.
which is kind of what I do with my door knocking for open house.
Well, there's no better way to get rid of a listing than let the neighbors pick their neighbor, right?
Right.
Hey, are you tired of seeing these signs? I'm tired of putting them out. Why don't you help me find a neighbor?
Well, and I did one, it was actually kind of funny, I did one for, Kathy on McNair, and 2 houses down, he's like, I would love that, cause my daughter wants to move to the neighborhood, it's just the pricing. So we talked, and I think he is looking into, one of the other houses in the neighborhood, but it was just kind of funny to have these conversations with them.
And that's a whole heck of a lot easier than bugging the stranger at the gas pump, right?
Exactly,
So
definitely less.
we'll talk about some of the best practices. So first and foremost, best practices, setting goals for what you want to get out of your open house. Participant guide, I'm assuming what, 7.5, 7.6? So first of all, we're gonna set goals, right? We talked about the 6 personal perspectives, moving from E to P, entrepreneurial to purposeful. So if I'm purposeful, I'm gonna set goals. So what is the goal of me hosting this open house? I promise you, it's not for you to take 2 hours away from your friends, your family, and sit somewhere in some random house and talk to strangers for 2 hours. Can we all agree that's not our goal?
Absolutely.
What would our main goal be hosting an open house if we were agents? Exposure,
Finding a buyer.
finding a buyer. What about one of the activities you said you were having a hard time with?
Lead generating.
So if I wanted to have 6 people out of my open house, well, if my goal was to put 10 in, I'm 60% of the way there. And all I did was give 2 hours of my time. We talked about it's a retail experience. I have something that some people somewhere are looking for. So how do I get them there? Well, maybe I set goals around how I'm gonna prepare for that open house to give myself the best chance to get enough people through. Do I have something on social media? Have the sellers shared it? Do I have signs out? You'll be shocked how many people don't have the open house on the MLS. Well, when I put it on the MLS, it goes to Zillow and Realtor.com, and it has a little banner that pops up and says this house is open Saturday 1 to 3.
There's also a really cool feature in showing time. Under the listing, that you can send out email and updates. From showing time.
And mass communicate.
Yeah. It's really nice, and you can send it to your market center or to anybody that's showed the house recently. I actually saw, I think it was, the Underwood Group, I just used it recently, to say, hey, we have a contract, but if anybody else is gonna be putting in a contract, put it in now.
I'll add a carrot to that. A lot of people have those notifications turned off. So another way you can do that is pull that listing. I'm one of those people because I get 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
You can pull the list of people who has shown it and call them straight out of it, because if they don't get their notification, then, you know, the time it took you to draft that and you stop and send it to 100 people and 40 got it, then there's 60 people who never knew what you ultimately wanted them to know. So it is a great tool to be able to see who they would send that to. So if you want to see who is shown your listing, you can also pull that out of it. You can even draft a text and send it, copy and paste however you want, or you can call them, right? So any other goals that you guys think there would be out of the open house? We've touched on some good ones, but is there anything else that comes to mind? Any of the stuff we've talked about thus far?
It's like learning.
Repetitions, right? Getting better.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say your first open house is going to be different than your 10th, right? So I'm a huge fan of feedback, right? So like getting feedback from some of the people you met. Hey, how did you feel like I answered your questions? I promise you, it's an uncomfortable question to ask a prospective buyer, and everybody knows what they say about opinions, right? It's like a belly button. Most everybody's got one. So if I can ask them about, hey, how did you feel like I answered your questions? Well, you know, I felt like I could have learned a little bit more about the house. Instead of taking that, you know, as criticism, well, did I prepare enough about the house that I was hosting or the houses in the neighborhood? And if I'm honest with myself, then maybe there's room for growth there, right? So not being afraid, and you know what that does? That breaks down that barrier of deflection or defense that person might have, because now, like, my favorite couple of words to use is, hey, I need your help. And I've always found that if I say I need your help, I usually have the person's attention for at least a short amount of time for whatever I say after that. So when I'm talking to that person, hey, I need your help. They're going to listen, right? Their ears just turn on. I'm trying to get better at my job and I value feedback. Is there anything you think I could have done better at the open house? They will appreciate the fact you asked that. You'll probably, like, if y'all were sitting across from one another, you would see them go from here to maybe like lean in, or their shoulders might, like, yes. You're just asking a very open and transparent question. And then you'll probably have a better conversation on the heels of that question than you would have had you not asked it. So we talked about the goals. So the next thing up in your alls, I don't know, your alls is probably all on the same thing. Pick the house. So we touched on this a little bit, but it's probably one of the more crucial steps to set yourself up for a successful open house. So once you've chosen a house, obviously getting familiar with the neighborhood, we talked about some of that. You should be making this a part of your strategy, right? Like, part of the goals you have could be picking the right house that's going to generate traffic. So what would we think about, we touched on this earlier, but bring some of that back into this particular bullet point. What would we think would go into picking the right house?
New listing. Busy neighborhoods,
Okay.
be a price.
Attractants, right? Like, if I'm thinking about, like, this open house is a bug zapper, what's the blue light that's going to run these buyers into this house, right?
School district.
Schools, maybe it's just rooftop count, right? You could also look at past sales data. Does this neighborhood typically turn over pretty well? Well, that would tell me that it's a popular neighborhood. So even if people don't like this house, people may like this neighborhood and show up for the fact that they can't ever figure out a way to get into this neighborhood. So maybe they'll consider a house that's not checking all their boxes just for the sake of getting in this neighborhood, school district, whatever the case may be. Is that fair? Any other things that you guys can think about when you're thinking about picking the right house?
I know that in my experience, one of the listings that I have is way out middle of nowhere. So I have done an open house or two, but they're not great because nobody wants to drive out there. So
Yep.
making sure that it's not out of the way.
Hard to get to, right? We need to make it as easy to find as possible, right? There's a reason why Waffle House is right there and it's not 8 miles out Man of War or Winchester Road, right? Now, because it's Waffle House, people would probably still find their way out there, right? We agree with that. But it's a little bit easier to find, right? Malone's, great example. Malone's goes in places they feel like they're gonna have more people come to. So same thing with since we're creating a retail experience, right? Same thing. So next up, we're going to talk about preparing and practicing. So you could consider inviting somebody of value, right? Like a lender. So if people had loan specific questions, or maybe you got a home inspector. She just hit the nail on the head of what a question a lot of people ask, which is, hey, why is this house back on the market? I'm so glad you asked. I've actually taken the liberty to bring a home inspector in here today so we can talk about some of those things. Now, you'd want to have the seller's permission before you did that, just so you don't have somebody just broadcasting deficiencies or things with this property, and that may help, right? Because at that point, if the sellers have already lost the contract, they're probably willing to do just about anything to get another one. So, hey, would you guys be comfortable if we had a home inspector who could actually speak to these things? Or let's say it was a roof, or let's say it was something with plumbing or electrical. Well, you could ask, hey, have you guys thought about getting a quote on those things? And we could have that quote there from somebody. I had a deal almost blow up last week over somebody's misunderstanding about a sewer cleanout cap. And it was as easy as they had put a ventilated sewer cap on the outside to alleviate that smell that can sometimes come from a trap that's dried out in the house. If you've ever smelled that, like walked in and your dryer's open or your washer and you're like, what world is that smell? Well, these people had put a ventilated cap on their sewer outside of the house to allow that trap, if it got dry or that kind of that mildewy kind of sulfuric smell, to be outside of the house versus in. Well, the home inspector hadn't seen a whole lot of those. Of course, his job is to put it in the report. The buyer's agent on the other side didn't have an idea about why that would have been installed there. Well, then they made this monumental disruption of the due diligence over this sewer cap. Then they had the thought, well, maybe the sellers will pay a plumber to come out. And it's still during due diligence, and the sellers were like, there's nothing wrong with it. Why do we need to spend $200 to have somebody come out and tell us there's nothing wrong with it? The buyers are doing their due diligence. Why don't the buyers pay for a plumber to come out and tell them there's nothing wrong with it? Now, had we said not had a contract on that house yet, but there'd been feedback on that, it would have been just as easy as the seller saying, well, I've got a friend who's a plumber. Let me just have him put something in writing that says, hey, this is the company I work for. I'm a master plumber. I'm a licensed plumber, whatever the case may be. This trap is more than fine, right? Whatever the case may be, but trying to eliminate some of those stumbling blocks. So that might be something on the subject of preparing, right? But when you're thinking about other questions you might have from visitors at the open house, how nice would it be if you previewed the house you're going to host and you looked at it through the eyes of your buyer, right? Well, why wouldn't I buy this house? Well, you're probably not an anomaly, right? So like if it's things that you're thinking, your buyers or prospective buyers, your open house visitors might be thinking the same thing. Make a list of those and then have some preloaded answers in your head about what you could give on those. You don't have to turn into a plumber. Just, hey, we've had a couple of people who have asked that. Here's what the sellers did to alleviate this. Because most of the time, like we said with her earlier, people just want to know that they can trust what they're being told. And you don't have to tell them everything, because you don't want to speak on every little bit of it if you don't feel comfortable or qualified. And if you can ask the right question to the right person who knows the answer, you can provide that answer to them, right? So, what would be some questions you feel like would be common at an open house that we've not covered already? We've already touched on if it's a house that's back on the market, so we can leave that one where we went a minute ago. But what are other questions that you feel like you all might get at an open house?
Enjoy, because it is our seller's disclosure, is when they ask you how old the roof is.
Mhm.
Like, oh, it's right here. Because that one's an easy one.
What about if it wasn't on the seller's disclosure?
that would be something I would say, hey, it's not on the seller's disclosure, but I would be happy to check with the listing
That's a
agent
follow-up.
and give you a call. What's your phone number?
Very good. What are some other questions?
We've already talked about this. Why are they selling it? Especially if they want to live in it. For sure.
Yeah, cause the buyers might be thinking, well, there's something wrong with it, they're moving. Well, maybe they're in the military and they just got PCS to a new base. Is that on them? No, that's just life, right? And so I usually revert back to life moves real estate, right? The 5 Ds they told us about early on: divorce, diapers, death, downsize, diamonds. That's the 5 Ds. Those move real estate. So usually it falls under one of those 5 Ds. So that's a perfect chance for me to give my dad joke spiel to whoever the buyer is. But it's like, hey, I don't know exactly, but I know from talking with other realtors and doing this for a little bit of time, usually it's one of the 5 Ds. Have you heard that? Have I told you my 5 Ds joke yet? And then it just breaks that ice. And they're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Like, there doesn't have to be something wrong with the house, or that it's not, it's a money pit or whatever bad thing they're thinking in their head. Hey, maybe they're divorcing. And if that's the case, then you maybe get their permission to just speak and say, hey, the sellers have new life goals, and that's what they're doing, right? There's always a way you can spin that up into something, because if you just came into my open house and you asked me that, and I was like, well, they're divorcing, where's your mind go? We get a deal? Well, it is sad, right? Let's think about like aggressive buyers for a second, right? If I told you like somebody died or they're getting a divorce,
They have to sell, so I can come in and lowball.
so if your buyers might be thinking that, your sellers might be thinking that is the reason they don't want you openly just saying, well, they're splitting up. Something easy to say is the sellers have different life goals and this house no longer matches those, so they decided to sell. Does that leaves it open to interpretation, but it doesn't diminish their position as a seller or like lose leverage for them, right? And it's a politically correct answer that, because maybe the buyer just got divorced and that might bring up some bad PTSD or memories, right? So if that's a question you think you're going to ask and you know the answer to, instead of trying to make up some bullshit when you get asked the question in the house, you might have already had time while you're drinking coffee or you're preparing for the open house to have a pre-populated answer to give that. Because I've always been in sales, so it's really easy for me to pull a rabbit out of the hat and give an answer. That's dangerous, right? That's almost worse than not knowing anything, because it's like sometimes that can be like, well, I'll just boom, rattle something off. Was it right? Was I allowed to say that? So, like in a situation where that could be sticky, right? At least knowing how to package that response in a way that's not going to put me in harm's way or my clients, well, then that's just being prepared, right? What are other things we think that we might get asked?
People usually ask me, is this going to pay me?
So that'd be a great thing to have on our list of questions for the agent for the house I'm gonna host. Especially if it's a house that's gorgeous. Like styled well, it's decorated well. I can almost set my clock to when I have a listing that's like a freaking showstopper.
You know, they're gonna ask.
They're like, well, what are they selling with the property? Well, instead of being like, I don't know, I'm just here to host the open house. You can have, well, hey, I think based on the seller's response, they would be open to leaving XYZ, or they'd be open to selling XYZ after they got the real estate piece done. So this isn't in the book, this isn't a part of the open house spiel, but I have seen deals blow up over a dining table. I've seen deals blow up over an outdoor patio set. Do we sell personal property? Now, we can help others transact personal property, but I always say, I'm a real estate professional. I transact real property or real estate. I'm more than happy to ask all those questions, and the sellers requested that we have those conversations after we've wrapped up due diligence and we've been through appraisal. Because we don't need the $660,000 sale to blow up over 20-year-old our house back patio furniture. Which is almost happened, right? You can tell I got a little scar tissue on that. But it's like, hey, let's hammer the real estate out first, and then we can touch on personal property.
I think the other one that I have got in the past is this a safe neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I could start to go and pull up a little bit, but I also tell them, hey, As far as I know, it is, but you're more than welcome to look it up yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, if I pull up any of those sites, I mean, there's crime everywhere. Y'all ever gotten on the crime map? It's depressing, really. I mean, it's like, and you can toggle these features where it keeps adding like the level of crime. Like obviously, like sexual predators or child events, like those are big things, right? You want to know those things, but you can filter it all the way down to like reports of like broken in cars. Well, the people who report those are some of the same people who just leave their freaking doors unlocked. It's like, well, I hate to break to you, but teenagers will go pull on door hinges. I live in a very nice neighborhood and I've had my security cameras have people pulling on my door hinges. You know what? I'm not a dumbass to lock my door. And if that did happen and I left my door open, well, I might say, well, somebody broke in my car. So I say all that to say, I'm usually pretty cautious on what I'll speak to about safety, but in the preparation phase, I'll drive that neighborhood maybe at a different time of day. Because when you're hosting the open house, probably what, a Saturday or a Sunday, 1 to 3, 2 to 4. I would argue that neighborhood looks different at 8 a.m. on a Monday than it does at noon on a Monday than it does at 5 p.m. on a Sunday. So I will always tell the clients, hey, that's a wonderful question. My relative definition of safe might be different than yours. And I would suggest that if you get some time, drive around the neighborhood a couple times. And if you've driven around the neighborhood and you've noticed, right? Because when I drive around neighborhoods, I'm looking at completely different things. I'm looking at properties that are, beat to crap, that maybe need some love, maybe stuff that's overgrown that I might be able to buy. But I'm also looking at, are there swing sets? Are there bicycles? Are there kids' play sets out? Because if somebody else is raising their kids 3 doors down, it's safe enough for them to raise kids. So again, that's a question that I think a lot of people ask. Some people are genuinely concerned, but it's just an easy question to ask to fill the conversation with. And when you tie reality to maybe their predisposed notion of, well, when I drove around the neighborhood a couple times last week, I've seen kids out everywhere, bicycles, I see people at the bus stop, like it's obviously safe enough for those people. So, but you're more than welcome to do your due diligence on safety. So those are all good ones. And I would say, as you go through doing these open houses, making lists of questions that you get most commonly, and then figuring out the best way to answer those would get you more prepared for the next open house. So it's like if you're building a Lego tower, every time I host an open house, my tower is getting a little bit taller and it's getting a little bit better put together because it's getting taller, so it has to be more sturdy, right? Same thing as your open house strategy. So next up, pick a time. So when you're thinking about picking a time for the open house is very important. So what open house themes or times do you feel like you've seen work for other people?
I think the standard is like Saturdays or Sundays, but I have the slides here and I saw the Thursday night. Yeah.
Sure.
That actually is a really good idea.
Certain neighborhoods may yield themselves better, right? Like if you knew that over in 40502, they have the music at Acton Park on a certain night of the week, one might assume it might be good to do an open house overlapping with the start of that, or maybe overlapping with the end of that. So looking for reasons people will be out is a great way. We had a house that we were a little bit nervous about its proximity to the UK football stadium. And we were going to host open houses on Saturday. Well, that could be a logistical nightmare for parking, especially because it's an older house that didn't have a ton of street parking. So much so that they actually had signs up from the city that you weren't allowed to park there on game days because residents were not able to get in their house because people lined them up to go tailgate. So thinking creatively, well, what time did they say you could stop parking there? If it was a noon game, that's different than if it was a 6 p.m. game. Well, on the 6 p.m. games, they could park there till noon. So we did open houses from 10 to noon. We still wanted people to be able to come through. And guess what? A lot of people are out walking or walking the tailgate. Well, if they love walking the tailgate, wouldn't they love walking the tailgate from this house on a game day? So just thinking about what's going to set yourself best for this. So if you go back and look at your goals, right? Goals of the open house to get people in. Well, then can I host that during something that's going to drive traffic to that open house? Hey, how are you?
Good, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're not interrupting at all. Glad you came in.
Thank you.
So I would also talk to other agents that you've seen have hosted open houses or that have listings and see when they plan on hosting those. So when I first got in real estate, it wasn't uncommon for us to park on the street and just walk to 3 listings for showings. Now, you all see 3 houses listed on the same street very often in Bay County anymore. Sometimes, right? But it's not as common. So we used to go and call all the agents that had open houses going in that and say, hey, do you mind if I get some information on your house and I can send people up to you? And can I put some information in your house and you send people to me? So that way, if they're in the neighborhood and it's a walkable neighborhood, well, how nice would it be if like you two were hosting open houses on other ends of the neighborhood and we all had each other's flyers in those and we could send those back and forth, right? Again, my goal is to maybe add 6 people to my database. Well, instead of having 2 people come to the open house, if I made some of those phone calls, could I maybe get 6 there? Right. So it's just setting myself up to not feel like I've wasted 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever you set that time for. I've seen agents do themes, right? If it's a house that has like a really nice back patio, I've seen people grill out. I've seen people on days of tailgate have a mini tailgate in their front yard, right? Giving out waters and snacks if people are walking the game. Hey, do you know anybody who's looking for a house? You're welcome to come take a look at this, take a video, take pictures, send it to the friends who you think might want to be in the area. So just have fun with it.
A lender. Factor. Real.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna be there. So do you want to be there and be bored as hell? Or do you want to be there and have people to talk to? I don't know about you guys, but I don't do bored well. Like if I'm sitting there, I'm like, now I'm doom scrolling Instagram or Twitter or something, right? But it's like if I'm there, I'd rather have people blowing the doors off. On the subject you brought up earlier of kind of co-hosting one, or we were talking about that some on the safety piece. I would say another added layer to that is in addition to maybe feeling safer, if it's a big house and you're worried about like, well, I might be, if it's 3,000 square feet, I could be all the way on the 2nd floor and somebody comes in and they slip past me. Well, if you're there helping me, well, you could maybe say, hey, I'll take the group upstairs and then you can watch the door and catch people to come in. We touched on it some, I think it's in your all's guide, but as far as like preparing, but also picking the, or like having the best practice, obviously a sign-in sheet, right? So how many people feel a little bit anxious asking people to sign into their open houses? It's okay because I do too.
For me.
Mhm.
I don't get a lot of people that they like skim past it,
Mhm.
so.
Some people will just say, hey, I'm not comfortable signing in. And so like where some people may not want to put their information on there, an easy way around that, and you guys probably already know this, so it's just like, hey, the sellers were kind enough to leave their house for the day and let complete strangers walk in it. We just require that everybody signs in for safety purposes. And it's no knock on them. It's just like if you want to look at the house, you got to sign in. And one thing that I like that makes it easier on getting both done at once is sometimes I've noticed people will get like not bored, but just like annoyed to have to fill out a bunch of stuff. I try to put the sign-in sheet and the feedback all on one thing.
That's what I've done.
So if you've got a card, just say, hey, while you're walking around the house, here's a pen. If you don't mind giving us feedback so we can let the seller know how to best position themselves, I'll just take that when you're heading out the door, right? So you can have that and be able to share it with them and share that as they go through the house. And you might know from if they're the 3rd group in, some of the feedback or questions, right? They just gave you the cheat codes. If you're anything like me, the only reason I passed school is because I had smart people that sat around me. I could see the sheet of what people have already said about the house. Well, if they gave feedback and I didn't get to talk to that person about it, probably the next person coming to the door is going to have similar feedback. So if I maybe saw a question on there that I don't feel like I prepared for, while they're walking around the house, I could be thinking about what question they could ask me based on these other people's feedback, right? So it's all data. And it's just all preparedness for how I'm going to respond in a situation where maybe somebody asks me something. So we feel good about time. We're square there and maybe themes. You guys, we're good. So prepare stats, know your market. We touched on this some. What would be some of the stats that you think would be important for prospective buyers coming into this open house? Like what do you think you'd want to have prepared to be able to share with that person when they came in?
Like how the schools are.
Okay, so some schools info. what would be ways you could pull those or pull that information, if you will?
Usually just go to Google.
And there's, they've got, a lot of that stuff public data. I've always been careful not to overspeak on schools as a real estate professional, but I've been able to just educate on what they are. If it's public data, it's public data, right? But if like you had a friend that went to that school and they had a terrible experience, you may not want to speak on that experience. Or if you told somebody that your friend's kid went to that school and they had a great experience, well, that might not be the same for everybody. So kind of trying to stay as Switzerland, if you will, on the subject is always good for me. Just, hey, here's some information on where I pulled that. There's tons of different reports out there you can pull about testing, about commutes, about sports, about extracurriculars, whether it's band or dance or anything of the sorts. Hey, here's some information I pulled off the internet. And if you have any questions about it, the contact information for that school district rep or whatever the case may be is on there. And that kind of puts it off of you to give an opinion. But it's like, here's what I was able to find on the internet. Because I found there's a reason everybody uses ChatGPT or Google. Why do you all feel like that is?
Quick,
It's an easy button, right? And click it. So if I know the first thing that if a couple walks in the open house and they had school age kids, in the back of their mind somewhere, they're thinking about school. So if they're going to ask me about that, well, if I have something I can just hand them, here's what I was able to find about the schools. I'm sure there's way more out there. You're welcome to take that with you, right? So if you had like an open house packet of schools, what other stuff do we think would be important to have stats on?
The thing that keeps coming back to my mind would be like the housing market in that area.
Yep. Market statistics for the neighborhood. Now, how often do things sell over here? And if they do, how quickly do they typically sell? Or how close to their list price, right? What's the price per square foot? And that way you feel like if somebody comes in and they're like, well, I saw the house down the street, you may have never walked in it, but if you looked at its digital footprint on the sales data, you might know it had this many beds, this many baths, this square foot. You quickly flip through the photos and realize they had a fully updated kitchen, or maybe they had no updates. The house you're sitting in did. Well, that way you can position yourself as the neighborhood expert with some quick, that should take 15, 20 minutes, right? Just run a quick search for the neighborhood, go through everything that's sold in the last 3 to 6 months. Once you start looking at properties a lot, my wife, she's ready to shoot me when like a pretty house comes up, like she wants to look at everything. And I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Like I'm looking at pictures. I'm looking for like cracks, updates, but like I can absorb that information a lot more quickly than she can, but that's because I do it for 10 hours a day. So it's like, what's the difference there with your consumers? They probably only purchase a house every 5 to 10 years. So they don't have a ton of repetitions in looking at houses. So you might be able to say, hey, I'm so glad you brought up that house down the street. I actually called that agent because I saw that it sold over asking price. And this is what they shared with me why. Or it sold for way less than asking price. And I got some information. It sounds like they had ABC 123. So when comparing apples to apples, maybe we're not far off on the price, or maybe it's comparing apples to oranges, and then you can explain to the consumer why that house is not necessarily as comparable to this, right? So it's just knowing the market, right? Some other things would be like what recreation is nearby. Is there parks nearby? Are there pools nearby? Is there a bike trail that's in the vicinity? Things that might be attractive to certain people, because not everybody who walks in the open house is going to be as interested in certain things as the next person who walks in. So when you strike up that conversation and we make it a little bit less awkward, right? We joked about that earlier, but once you kind of get a feel for who this person is, now you can start saying, well, you got, and these are things that like you pick up on over time. But like if you guys have ever hosted an open house, you'll probably find yourself by the window, right? And they're like, look at that, who's coming in? If they pull up in a Land Cruiser that's got a camper on top, I could probably assume they're outdoors people. So like in my mind, I'm talking to an outdoors person. Well, if this is in the middle of a neighborhood and the houses are like this on top of each other, they may say, well, it just feels like really close to everybody. Hey, I saw the camper on y'all's vehicle. You guys go out to the gorge or like you camp a lot. What's interesting to you, right? What type of house are you looking for? What are you trying to get near? And they're like, shit, I didn't know I had a camper on my house, right? It's being observed. Or they might come in and they're by themselves and they've got a wedding band on. Hey, do you guys have kids? Do you have a family? Are you buying this for you? Like just paying attention to things that come on, right? Or they're wearing a UK shirt and they walk in, you guys going to the ball game this weekend, right? Do you all go to games often? Do you like to tailgate? Do you host people to watch the game? So I've got a badass back patio here that you can watch ball games on and grill on, right? I mean, those are things that you can say, but when you're doing that, you're not gassing the person up. You're just kind of lowering that defense mechanism. So they walk in there like this, right? It's like they're ready to fight. Some people, right? The people you might be more nervous about talking to, they're like rigid. And if I get those shoulders just relax a little bit, maybe crack a smile, then I know I have their attention and I can actually get the real questions, the real interest out of them while they're there. Other stuff might be traffic and commute times. So kind of knowing maybe if you're in Lexington, right? Since we're standing in Lexington, how close am I to the interstate? How close am I to Hamburg? How close am I to the hospitals? How close am I to New Circle? How close am I to Nicholasville Road if that's something I'm trying to avoid, right? I mean, just thinking about things that maybe would come up as positives or negatives for commute, because that's what that person's probably not thinking about while they're standing in the house, looking at all these gorgeous things in the gorgeous house. They might have to wait till they get home and they're really like now massaging the idea of buying that house. Well, I didn't even look. How far was that to work? Well, if you got thousands of dollars of technology sitting on the countertop in front of you, hey, where do you guys work? Oh, you're at Baptist? Well, did you know you're 10 minutes away from Baptist? And you can actually avoid Nicholasville Road, right? So, I mean, just more data is more knowledge is more power, right? And you're holding these open houses. Anything else you guys think would be important about stats? We've covered everything that I have on my sheet. Well, employment information. So like if there's a new restaurant or a new factory or new jobs coming to the area, that might be important to know, right?
The glass factory that Apple's dumping all that.
100%, right? Or if Toyota's doing an expansion. Just things to know wherever you're at, just what's coming to the area. All right. Be safe. I think we touched on this. Buddy system, arriving early, parking on the street, check your entrances and exits, making sure your cell phone's fully charged, turning on all the lights.
Another.
You can tell when this was written. Y'all look at number 7. Check your local COVID guidelines. Jesus. All right. We'll skip over that.
Be there. It will always be there going forward. But that it comes into another thing of doing the co-host and then I think that is really having an inspector and a lender come with you.
Yeah, it's kind of dual-edged sword, right? You have the built-in buddy system and somebody who can provide some value to the person. Now, obviously, we touched on it earlier. Just make sure those people are comfortable with you bringing people in their house. But any ahas or takeaways out of that section that we just covered? Stuff you hadn't thought about, stuff you want to implement. Let's hear one from at least 2 people. New stuff you wish you thought about, stuff you're thinking about differently.
It's just like the theming of the open house, like I always just thought I'd be on Saturday or Sunday, like I didn't know.
You get really
That was
excited.
it for wine,
Yeah,
and like Thursday.
Yeah.
Like,
I know the one that I did with Philip on that house in Vermont. They had violinist and cello player.
yeah,
Heavy order.
they say you get so creative, yeah.
yeah. I mean, if it's Cinco de Mayo, taco open house. I mean, food truck. We've had a couple where we brought where it's like in a neighborhood with a bunch of kids and it was on the weekend. We just paid the ice cream truck the minimum they needed to be there. So we covered him so it was worth his time. And then he's sitting out in front of the open house. So we had signs and flags and everything. It was a neighborhood that people walk in, and we had 50 people come through. Now, while they're there, hey, grab an ice cream. We've already paid for it. If you don't mind, for everything's quid pro quo in the world, right? Whether people say it's all relational, that's bullshit. If you ask me, at least everybody's in it for themselves, right? And so I have to go into that assuming, hey, if we were kind enough to buy ice cream from the neighborhood, could you be kind enough to sign in and provide feedback? And it's not that I'm going to say that to somebody, but it's assumed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for the real hard-headed people that I have to really spell it out clean, I might have to say something to that effect, but I'm obviously be polite about it. But ways for me to get more data about where I'm at, what I'm doing, and how it benefits me, and more importantly, my sellers or my business, if it's not my seller, what can I do to give myself the best chance to add people to my database, have people to talk to, and follow up with, right? All right. Next, we're going to talk on prepare, prospect, and pursue. So a quote from Gary Keller in the MREA, the difference between big and really big is how you manage your time and focus. I think we just hit the nail on the head with that last section about setting goals, making sure it's a good use of your time. How do you maximize the time spent on that property is a great one. So next up, prepare, prospect, and pursue. So let's talk about preparing. We touched on a lot of that, but in your all's participant guide, can I get a number on the prepare?
Prepare is page 7.8.
7.8, perfect. So on 7.8, we've got goals we set for the open house to get appointments with active buyers or sellers, or to be buyers and sellers, right? So to be at your best and achieve what you set out, it does require preparation. So have you set aside time on Saturday to prepare for your Sunday open house? You don't want to be preparing for your open house at 1:30 if it starts at 2. You're too late, right? You might be half-assed prepared for it, but it's probably not going to be the same outcome had you set aside time Thursday or Friday to get the signs out, maybe door knock the neighborhood, maybe introduce yourselves to some of the neighbors, maybe hop on a quick call with the listing agent, or maybe even the listing agent would be as kind as to say, hey, I'm on vacation this week. Why don't I three-way in my sellers and they can tell you what they love about the house?
And when I've done the door knocking, I have let the neighbors know that I'm doing the open house and offer to do the CMA. So on top of my prep for the open house, a lot of times I'm doing CMAs for the neighbors and they have to come to the open house to get the data.
So you're dangling the carrot of find out what your house is worth,
Yeah.
and you can meet me there from Sunday to 2 to 4. So the thing I like that it touches on that I think not a lot of people pay attention to is not only are you preparing to host open house, but you're also preparing your mindset for how am I going to approach this? Because like if you're having a shitty weekend and all of a sudden you remember, oh, I got this 2-hour open house I got to do, and you walk in there, I've always been told how you walk into a meeting is how you plan to walk out of it. So if you walk into it thinking, okay, this is going to be a waste of my 2 hours, nobody's going to come, well, are you going to like resent the fact you're doing this open house? You're there for 2 hours, probably. Or if it's like, hey, this is going to be the best open house I've ever hosted. I'm going to have 10 groups come through. I'm going to practice these conversations that I've been working on, and I'm going to get something out of it. Even if it's not a lead, I get the reps of getting better at my job. I'd say that open house goes way better than the former. Can we agree with that? Pretty easy to get our minds in the right spot. I would set a goal for how many leads you intend to capture. How many appointments would you like to get from your next open house? And then you're going to want to make sure that you are setting time aside if you're going to host open houses to start forming your open house plan, right? Maybe it's a playbook. When I sign up to host an open house, I'm going to have this many signs out by this date. I'm going to knock on this many doors. I'm going to offer this many free CMAs. I'm going to have a theme of X at least once a month. Now, don't take that as being on the slide as saying that's like you have to have a thing. You don't have to have a thing. But if you prepare right and you create as much of a funnel into your house, you can create a theme by just giving really, really good preparation. That can be your theme. Your theme can be the best open house anybody's ever been to, and you didn't have to give away a gift card or ice cream or any of that. You can just get as many people there, have as much information as you think people are going to want, and answer their questions. And I would argue that a 5-star experience at an open house would be just as good as any theme you could ever come up with and cost you less money. Any other thoughts on preparing? They've got a little template schedule for the week before the open house. So I would take this and make it your own. What they've got here is Monday, select the house. Tuesday, post online, walk the neighborhood, invite neighbors to come see the house. Wednesday, post it online again, put out a yard sign. Thursday, post online again, invite your database. Friday, post online again, prepare market statistics, print flyers, and door knock. Why do you think they waited till Friday to prepare the market statistics and print the flyer? Correct. So I have most relevant data headed into that weekend. If I pulled it on Monday and all of a sudden 2 houses got listed and one went under contract, the worst thing that could ever happen is I slide that sheet across the table at the open house. Well, that house is sold. Open mouth, insert foot, right? But if I pull them on Friday, I know. And hey, like you just said earlier about houses that may go under contract. Well, if I printed all that crap on Wednesday and it sells and I cancel open house, it's just wasted print, right? So just kind of timing out what makes the most sense for efficiency and effectiveness, right? So next up, talk about what clients like to know. Back into preparing community and neighborhood information. You guys have already hammered a lot of this stuff out. Relocation information, first time buyer specifics, mortgage information. So even if you can't have a mortgage professional there, maybe getting a rate quote or a closing cost estimate for that house at that price, a lender would love to spit one of those out for you. They can create these little flyers that have your picture, their picture, picture of the house, statistics on what that house could cost them if they purchase. It's a great way to give them something, at least to get their wheels turning, right? And I would say if you have a good enough conversation with that person, you can start saying, hey, if you guys are just starting your adventure on home buying, that's great. And just be leery about looking on Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, all those mortgage calculators on there. Sometimes will advertise a much less dollar amount to get your attention, to get you to click. I've actually taken the time to sit down with a mortgage professional and run it based on property taxes, homeowners insurance, things that are real, right? Not advertising some rate of like a rate buy down or something that just gets me to click on it. But the worst thing you want is somebody to come in and be like, oh, this thing's only $1,500 a month. And then they go sit down with the lender and it's 19. Well, that's not a fun experience for anybody. So just having a realistic quote about what that looks like is a great way to prepare. Is there any other things you guys can think of this list of stuff that's up here that might be good for having what clients may like to know ready to be able to provide them with? We touched on a lot of it, so it's okay if there's nothing, but
So I think the only thing that I'm seeing on the like the week before open house preparation is if you're preparing everything. I think when you go out on Friday, the only thing it doesn't have is the directionals. Right, say on Friday, say yard sign. Well, it says yard sign, but it doesn't have the directionals. And like attention to detail is like.
I'd say lump those in that and just make it plural signs.
Yes.
And that might be a different day that you want to put those out, but I see that and I take that as directionals, everything I need to get people in there, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want to do them on Thursdays, that's fine. I would also kind of get a feel for the neighborhood. If you're doing it during election season, just plan on some of them getting plucked out because that's when they get real adamant about not putting things in certain areas. But again, that's just in that preparation. So if you drive around the neighborhood, you see somebody put a sign out on Wednesday and all of a sudden it's gone on Thursday, I probably wouldn't put my sign right there. Safe bet it's going to be yanked up and in the bed of some code enforcement guy's truck, which I haven't had his cell phone number because he took 40 of them one day and I had to go get it. Let's see. I think that's pretty good on the preparation side. Prospect. So building trust and rapport, providing value, capturing information, qualifying leads. So is this the next page in your all's? Is it 7? 11?
They have a whole checklist. So it is page 711.
Okay.
Or slide 35.
Perfect. So in your MREA, it's talking about the leads listing leverage model. Open houses are all about the leads, right? So if you can get as many people through there, you have a chance at obtaining some of those leads. And then you need to have a plan when we talk about the goals, right? The worst thing you can do is set a goal of having 10 leads. And then you get those 10 leads, and you don't have a plan for what happens after you get those leads. So if I was planning for that open house, I'm also thinking about, well, once I get what I say I'm going to get, what happens after that, right? Maybe it's a thank you card. Thank you for popping in the open house. Or maybe it's just a simple call, thanking them, see if they have any additional questions. Maybe that feedback for you, maybe that feedback for the seller. Really, you're agnostic over what that response is. It's just more the act of making that call and getting to have that conversation and warm it up a little bit more, right? And you really don't have much of an opinion on what gets shared other than you've asked that question, right? You've given them a chance to start talking. Because you can ask the question and you can shut up and put yourself on mute or bite the inside of your cheek. I promise they will continue to talk. And if they don't, then you just figured out, okay, that's not somebody I'm going to continue to follow up with. And it might take a couple of times until you crack that egg and they start actually talking and giving you real feedback or asking real questions. Nevertheless, having a plan in place for what happens after that open house is going to be just as important as preparing for it. So, on the subject of building trust and rapport, obviously we're going to greet everyone that comes in the door. We're not just going to be sitting there on our phone and it's like they're just walking around and it's like you talk about awkward. I mean, you just made it that much more awkward. Engage in conversation and staying positive, right? It's really hard for somebody to be a jerk if you're smiling and you're asking questions and you're trying to help them, right? But if you're like, acting like they're bothering you by coming in your open house because you brought your crappy weekend that you had because something bad happened into the open house, it's probably going to be easier to have a not so engaging experience with that person. I like questions like, what brought you in today? Are you looking for homes in this neighborhood or price range? Have you been looking at other houses? Would you like to know more about the market or this neighborhood? What do you like about this house that I may share with other guests that come in? So open-ended questions, again, all you're trying to do is get them talking. Once people start talking, have you ever gotten in a conversation and you like blink like 10 seconds in, and you're like, I've said way too much? Clients do that all the time. So if I can ask the right question that just gets them lowered on that defense mechanism and talking, I'll probably get reasonable or reliable data or feedback from that conversation. Let's talk about providing value. So knowing either your stats, your team stats, your office's stats, the market stats, understanding different personality types. We talked about that earlier. If I see that they pull in and they're all wearing baseball uniforms, I can reasonably assume they're probably a baseball family and they've been at the ballpark. Hey, do you guys play year round? Do you play only in the summer? Is it important that you stay in the park? I saw everybody's in, it looks like everybody's been at South Lexington this morning for games. Are you guys going to want to stay there next year? Like just having something to talk to them about so that you know what is important to them. And then have something to offer to the visitors. What do you all think that looks like as far as being able to offer them? We've touched on some of the things. What do you think you'd want to be able to offer them to take with them?
Seller's disclosure, listing of the house.
So maybe some market info.
They can use for other.
So maybe it's your app. All right. Hey, I've got this really great app. I know everybody uses Zillow. This one's a little bit more customizable for what you might be looking for. You can scan this QR code and it'll be sent to me. So if you have questions about not only this house, but any house you see, you click one button in there and I'll be notified. Right? Just giving them something they can take with them, right? And you can do things that don't cost you money. Right? If you've got a lender that's going to co-host with you, maybe the lender, and you split a $50 Malone's gift card. Everybody that signs in, we're going to do a random drawing on Sunday evening. Can I make sure I have the right phone number and email in case you win? So just another reason to get accurate data, because and this is something that's not in the slides, but what I found is at open houses, I will before the open house go ahead and just falsely sign in. Like you can use an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend's name, you can use a previous teacher's name, whatever, but fill it out entirely. So that way people are programmable. Like, have you ever gone to like a wedding or a baby shower and you see, are people just like signing in or are they like writing a nice note? Well, if everybody else wrote a nice note, are you just going to sign in? You're probably going to write a nice note too. So if I completely and wholly fill out a sign in at the top, people are programmable. They may also completely and wholly fill out the feedback as the person before them did, because they don't want to look like crap when my ex-girlfriend from 22 years ago fully filled out and they're just going to put one line, right? Like whatever the case may be, I just like to kind of set the table for how I anticipate feedback to get filled out or that form to get filled out. And I found more often than not, people will mirror and match what they've seen other people do. We talked about the market stats. I think that's a good one to have. you guys familiar with like mirroring and matching behavior? Have y'all like talked about that in any of the classes so far, or any of the trainings you guys have been to? So,
Just like,
yeah, I think that's part of it, but like what I found on the same subject of like people are programmable. Like if I was sitting across from you right now, and I'm not picking on you, but like I would also cross my leg and probably have my hands in my lap. But those are subconscious cues to make you feel more comfortable because you see me doing what you're doing.
it's my fault.
Yeah,
It's my fault.
it's very real. And so also like if I'm sitting across the table from somebody, like if we're at the kitchen island and they're standing there like this, I might start like that, but it's a game for me. I might hang in and just be like this on the counter, just to see if they'll move. Right? But like it's not that I'm messing with people, but if I can get you to get closer, or if I can get you to lean in. Somebody shared, and you all probably learned about this in psychology, but do you all know the two least reupholstered seats in any commercial or professional application? The backs of seats. So like these right here. What get reupholstered the least? Think about where you go, where you sit, and where would be the least place that would ever get reupholstered? Where do people have the typical most uncomfortable conversations? Banks
Office,
and
yeah.
hospitals.
I was gonna say.
Well, courtroom probably too. That's why they're really hard positions to sit on. But you think about when you're at the bank, right? And if you're at the bank, you meet with somebody, you probably start like this. Like rarely do people ever get comfortable enough to sit back. So I try to take that same thought when maybe we're in a house that's got furniture in it and we're all sitting around. Most people are probably sitting like this or like this. But if I kind of find myself getting comfortable, or maybe I cross my leg, I just have my hands and I'm like this, all I'm doing is trying to see, can I condition the person that's sitting across from me to just slowly just ease the tension? So I can get you comfortable, I can get you to talk. If I can get you to talk, I can get the question answered that I know I need to have answered to get the feedback that I need to figure out what are we really talking about. So to that psychology point, I like to study that into things. There's really cool stuff on like neuro-linguistic programming that you can get real nerdy on about certain questions you ask and certain words you use in those questions that can get the response maybe that you really wanted. But there's just things that you can pay attention to about how people interact. And I try to study people. I watch how they look me in the eye, do they shake my hand? Like I'll quickly start trying to discern what is this personality type that I'm talking to. Because if I see somebody come in a coat and tie on the weekend, I would probably ask them questions in a different manner than if somebody came in dressed in some joggers and a crew neck. It's not that there's anything wrong with what either person has on. It just might be how they respond to the way that they're spoken to. I'm not a dummy. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I know I sound and look a certain way. And so if I can mask any inefficiencies that I feel like I have in a conversation with somebody who's different than me, but more importantly, I can try to mirror and match that person. Like I'm not going to have a completely different accent. I am who I am. I talk how I talk. And if I can ask certain questions in certain ways that maybe land differently with those people, I may have a better conversation with that person based on how I ask them, what I say, words that I choose to use or not use. And that's just all reps, right? We talked about earlier the thing that was the very last on what the agent benefits from by hosting those open houses, those reps. Like just getting in conversations with complete strangers to figure out how quickly can I get her to stop having RBF, right? Or whatever, like, those people that come in and they're just like smug and like if I can crack a smile out of them, like it's a game. Like I have to be there for 2 hours. I signed up, so I might as well have fun. And I'm kind of a creature of learning and studying. And I just like learning people. Like if I can get you to smile, then I might even write down, I got that lady smiling. She didn't look like she smiled in 35 years. So that's a win, right? But I can also see if somebody doesn't want to smile, I'm not going to keep trying to crack jokes to get them to smile. Because then they're like, this kid's a freaking idiot. Like, what is comedy hours, or stand up, or is this an open house, right? So it's kind of learning your audience. But the mirror and match piece is huge because you can figure out quickly how much leeway or lack thereof you have in that conversation to try to draw some relevant information out. All right, so we've talked about the value piece. capturing information and qualifying leads, sign-in sheet, it's obviously cost effective, it's easy. I know a lot of people pack these around and these around, right? There's ways you can utilize technology or digital assets to try to get people to sign in. Like if you came to the open house and you didn't have a pen and I didn't have a pen, but we need to get each other's informations, that's as easy as us touching the ends of our phones together. Now we both have iPhones and now we've just got each other's information. So like trying to make it as easy as possible for somebody, especially somebody that needs something, to be able to get in touch with me, right? Like, or God forbid, you got 3 pins and they're those shitty pins the lender gave you and they're all dried out, right? We've all had those pins where you like try to write and I click at the end of it, click my finger, is it gonna work? No, screw it. All right, can I just put you in my phone? Right? And I think as long as you can build enough rapport where that person feels comfortable giving you their information, they could go out. I've had people go out to their car and get a business card and bring it back in. Right. I mean, it's just all in whatever the conversation is taking shape as. Now, that was a situation where I ran out of business cards because I had so many people come through. I didn't have anything else. And instead of me just like tearing a sheet of paper out, like handwriting it and sloppily giving it to them, well, I got a card in my car. I'll go get it, bring it in. Now, that person also wanted, they were brick masons. So they wanted to do brick repairs. So they had a reason to give me their stuff. But I found out they were a brick mason because when they pulled up, I saw they had a sign on the side of their truck. So when I asked them, I was like, what do you do for a living? I think I saw you do masonry, stone repair. Do you do a lot of work around here? Do you have a preference? Do you like old homes, new homes? Do you work on homes at all? Do you do horse farm, stone restorations? So those are conversations. And by the end of that conversation where I got them talking about themselves, we had a much more open and honest dialogue about the house they were staying in. Well, he wasn't actually out looking at that house at all. He had redone one down the street and always driven by that house and wanted to see the inside of it. But I got a stonemason out of it. So now if my clients ever had a need for it, then that wasn't a complete waste of him coming in that open house. But if my mindset wasn't right, and I was like, well, this dude's just in here wasting my time, I might not have had as open and honest dialogue with that person or picked up a stonemason that lo and behold, somebody called me like 2 months later and had this entire back patio they needed redone. And I sent him his information. And actually, that guy ended up sending me his sister who needed to buy a house like 3 months later. So I just luckily turned a conversation where I had space to fill in the open house into I got a vendor and then I eventually got a piece of business out of it. Because there's really no person who may never need your services. It's just a matter of when or if I'm willing to follow up with them. Let's see if there's anything else on the providing capturing the information. So you can use the app. I'm not as familiar with the KW app side of things. But there's ways that I'm sure they can sign right into that, where you could share your unique link to them. I'd say get with Lexi on how to do that because you don't need to explain that.
Site, create a site.
So you can just have that ready to go, customize it for the house you're in, boom, send it. Whatever's gonna, I'll tell you this: there's no perfect way to do it. It's the way that you're gonna do it and the way you're gonna do it consistently. That's the only thing I'd say. The book may have other thoughts, whatever. It's the same thing as a database or exercise routine or diet. Do the one that you're going to do, right? And it's the same thing with how you're going to get people to sign in. I'm agnostic as far as like you should use the sheet, you got to use the app, whatever you feel comfortable using and you feel comfortable in getting other people to use. That's the one I'll tell you to use. And I think just like being honest with yourself, the very last one's a good one. Like sometimes if you have like a real crappy interaction with somebody, you almost got to like reset. Like for me as a dad, it's sometimes like if I've worked the entire day and I'm like burned out on work stuff, I have 20 to 30 minutes in the car that I'll treat as like halftime before I get back in the house, right? Because I'm gonna walk into a whole nother world of completely different interactions than I've had all day, and I can't take that shit home with me. Like I have to show up, be happy, be a dad. Now, am I perfect at it? No, I'm human. And if I have a real crappy interaction in the open house, I may have to just say, hey, why am I here? Well, I'm here because if I have my goals written down, because I want to get 10 leads, I want to set 2 appointments, and I want to make sure the seller's house is held open at the highest level possible. That little like 30-second refresh might make my interaction with the next person who comes in that much better to where they sign in, we have a good conversation, because I'm only one conversation away from the next deal, right? So if I have that interaction, because it's real easy for like, y'all read The Energy Bus? Great book. Need to read it if you haven't. It's not The Energy Bus. It's short. If I can read it, anybody in here can, I promise. but there's a character in there called the vampire. And the vampire is the person that sucks all the energy out. Then there's the bus driver. So I won't ruin the book, but I always try to be the bus driver, right? And I get to have the control over the outcome of everybody on my bus. And when I host an open house, I have people getting on my bus. So if that vampire comes in, I can handle them. And if I check myself at the end of that interaction, I can be better for the next person. But Energy Bucks is one of my favorite books ever. And it's an easy read. I will add double down on that. So pursue. This is probably the most important piece of all this as we talk about the preparation and the hosting and the execution. Now we have to talk about the pursuit piece.
This has been like the hardest thing. If I have someone who doesn't have an agent, it's usually like 1 or 2 people. And then when I try to reach out to them after, they just goes.
So what do you think about that interaction or that experience that you could do differently or that you'd like to maybe have more confidence in doing, or what have you done that maybe you feel like you're really, really close on? And this isn't the big one, this is just
Yeah.
discourse in a conversation. What do you think? What do you think the opportunity is? Or where do you feel like the gap is in that?
I guess I didn't get to like know them enough. But they felt like comfortable to like respond to me.
Yeah.
I want to. Just like-
That's certainly, I mean, everything rises and falls on trust, right? They've always taught us that from day one. So, you know, that could be a piece of it. And I always think about it this way. I try not to take it personally because everybody's tuned into What's in It for Me radio, right? So it might not be the right time for them to answer you. And that's not because you did a bad job, right? You might have had the best conversation you could and built rapport, and they might just be so self-absorbed in their crap that they got going on. It's not the right time to engage in that conversation.
Right.
So I think just trying to have creative mechanisms to touch base, because really for me, the worst place you can leave me is on red, right? In purgatory, because I don't know where we stand. Like, is this a no, like you want me to leave you alone? Or is it it's just not the right time? Or like, are we going? Right. So like you've got the buckets of like yes, maybe, / I don't know, or no. And like I'm always trying to get you out of the middle. I want you in one or the other. And if we get to know sooner, great. I just got that much more time back for me to spend on the people who are maybe still in the I don't know or the maybes and the yes. And so I think sometimes I've had to really dumb it down. There's only 2 things in the world that I think buyers and sellers care about. Sellers care about comps, buyers care about houses. And I can boil all those down into everybody just cares about houses, right? Because if it's comps, it's still houses. So if that's the case, and let's say you did have a conversation about, you know, whatever they liked about the house or they didn't like about the house, that may turn into a game for you to then see, can I get a response out of this person? Especially if, let's just say, they're opinionated about their feedback about the house. Well, then you can play off that, and maybe you find something that doesn't check all their boxes intentionally, and just say, hey, I saw this house, and I thought, hey, it might not be 100% the way there, but I'm just curious what your all's thoughts were. So that way, it's not them committing to sit down with you, it's just them committing to do what they've already done. So you talk about the comfortability piece. Well, they already clearly feel comfortable giving you their opinion. So let me play on that and try to get their opinion on another house, or going a step further, the wife really wants to be near this, or the husband really needs a detached garage, or whatever the case may be, finding that property and sending it to them to say, hey, I want to make sure you guys have seen this. And I know when we talk, we've been looking at properties on Zillow or whatever the case may be. I happen to be looking at properties for another one of my clients, and I thought this might be worth at least sending your all's way. What do you think? Another question I like, if you can't get it to move forward, is very simple. It's kind of blunt, but it's just, where do we go from here?
Like, I was gonna ask, like, how do you go from sending them similar houses to like setting up a buyer's?
Yeah. So another thing I've seen people do is if you have that conversation, you get the feedback on that house or that neighborhood or what they're looking for. If you've already pulled a search for that open house, just going ahead, you've got their contact information, putting them on a search. And if you put them on a search that's through your app or however you're using to be able to track, then you'll be able to see when they get on there and view stuff.
Yeah.
And there's people that have literally sat on a search for me for years. there's been multiple attempts for me to reach out to that person. The consumer thinks every time that they get a listing update, I sent that to them. That's great, because I just cloned myself. They're thinking I'm sending this email every time, like, hey, I found this property. Well, no, I set up the right search to send you that property, but in their minds, you're still sending them properties. So every time they get a property from you, they think you're out looking for houses for them, which is ultimately what you want. And it's not that you're not looking for it. It's just you figured out a way to automate that outbound communication. And then I've had that same person that sat on a search for years. Hey, I'm so sorry I've been ghosting you for like 3.5 years. And then, usually I'm kind of a jerk. I'll just kind of bust them back a little bit. Like, yeah, I almost believed you out of things because I just thought we were done. But hey, we just got job promotions, or we're getting ready to, we just sold something, or our financial position has changed. We're ready to buy. So then all of a sudden, 3 years of what I thought was just dead, like they were gone, I wrote them off, turns into an active prospect who's ready to go. So I like just setting them up on a search, especially if you get to the point where you feel like it's stalled out. Well, what's the worst they can do? Unsubscribe?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you just got your answer, and it required only the time it took for you to set that up front. Now, while you're trying to get to that either definitive yes or no, you can get in there and say, hey, I just saw this property come across the search. What do you think? So you can set yourself up, when you set those up, to send it to yourself. I love that. Now it gives me way too many emails throughout the day, but I like seeing what my clients are getting, because then I can click that link and then text it to them. Hey, I saw this property came in the email. I just want to text it to you, make sure you saw it. What are your thoughts? You guys want to get out and take a look? See if this one's any worse or better than the one I met you guys at? So that might just be something to kind of play around with, but I just try not to take that stuff personal.
We can send them the same text as you send some. I don't like those. How much is it called, break away? Not to break the eggs? I like customizing my text.
So one thing I like to do, when I meet with somebody, and I usually have like, so if you guys don't number your open house sheet sign-ins, I would start. So like, even if it's just down the side, you can type it in there if you want, but like numbering it down there, like I'm very visual and observant. So like, I might write down on a separate sheet of paper or in my notes on my phone, like if she came in and I numbered her number 1, I might say, had kid with her, had Reds jersey on, had UK on, like something I can remember later, or drove the same vehicle as me, like something to kind of tie that in. So that way, to your point, you can customize some of that, or maybe what you talked about. Had a kid at South Lexington baseball, had a kid getting ready to go to Veterans Park Elementary, whatever the case may be. Now, if I want to get that information, I got to figure out how to pull that information out of them. So then I'm shaping my conversation style. But I like just having a separate sheet, and I'll just write down the number of where they sign in, and I'll just put my notes in. Because we have like a really busy open house and there's 10, 12 people come through. Well, it's no different than when you show 10 or 12 houses and the buyers are like, was that dining room on the left or was it on the right? I mean, it's the same thing with the people you talk to. Was she in the Cats jersey, or was the kid in a baseball unit? I can't remember. But if I wrote it down right then when it was fresh, then I can customize that follow-up. Hey, hope you guys had a good tournament. I know you guys are going to Nicholasville next weekend for the baseball tournament. Hope everybody did well. Hope you guys won. I just want to check in and see if there's anything I can do to help. Right. And then it's more, to your point, it's more custom. I'm not really cheesy either. So I try to shy away from being too much of a jokester unless I have your permission to joke. Yep. I've got it on the clock. Thank you.
He's pretty much done.
So your homework will be plan the next open house. And even if you don't have one scheduled, plan it out. So whatever makes the most sense for when you plan to host one, try to look at the way, if you haven't hosted them yet, Canvas. If you have, look at the past open houses, and figure out what you want to do. So it looks like there is one in there. So that can be your quick checklist guide. What page is that on?
It is on 7.9 and 7.10.
So I would go in there, maybe that helps shape your own template of it. If you want to do it on your phone, do it on a piece of paper.
It's very similar to the 7-layer or 7-level open house that you get in Marnier or Shape.
Yep, Chip. So last but not least, activities. So when you're looking at what you've got available for today, tomorrow between now and the next class, I would just say find time and have it on your calendar for when you want to do these things. Whatever ones you have been doing, keep doing them. Maybe try to do more of them. Things you've been trying to avoid, find time on the calendar, put those on, set an appointment with yourself of when you plan to do them. And you will certainly have an easier time accomplishing them if you have it on the calendar, because then you have less room for distractions. Let's see, I want to make sure I have not skipped over anything. Your next session, let's look at what that is real quick so you can prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's cooking.
Media. This is.
So capturing leads with social media, go ahead and feel free to kind of peek ahead.
You have to speak to you tomorrow? Sheridan, you're coming back, right?
I'll be here Thursday. I've got 3 or 4 total.
It might be Madison. Here, we're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
And then if you all haven't already gotten one of these, I'm gonna hand these out. I know Lexi will have them for the team meeting as well. You can get 3 first steps of old. I will be there. Perfect. You can leave that right on the desk for whoever sits beside you during the team meeting. She one of those.
Full court figure.
Fantastic.
Don't run into the door. You guys do.
I was bowling coordinator before. So if you have questions about that,
I did.
Kelly, Tara, Jackie, Tristan, they can talk to you about it. I would strongly suggest at least coming to First Steps. I'll be there. And I'll be attending full bowl, so it's definitely worth the time.
First step slash. When I was working at
Good.
Villa. It's amazing.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you guys.
Jordan, can I get your opinion on some inspection?
That is the question. I can read it.
This meeting is